Welcome to season 13 of the Parenting Aces podcast, a proud member of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and this week we have our old friend Todd Whittam back with us to talk about what exactly is high performance tennis? What does the training look like? What does the term even mean? And who is it for? Todd has a lot of experience on this topic, and of course, as always, has very strong views to share with us. So I think you're going to find this one eye-opening, and hopefully will help you clarify exactly what it is your family is committed to doing and what it is your child is committed to doing. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation once again with Coach Todd Whittam. Parenting Aces is providing this podcast as a public service. Reference to any specific product, service, or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by Parenting Aces, Lisa Stone, or Fit for Two Inc. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on this program is not and does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Always do your own due diligence before purchasing, hiring, or using any product, service, or provider. Todd, it's good to have you back. It's been a little bit, but we were due for another one of these.
Well, thanks for inviting me on once again, Lisa.
Well, of course. And, typically these episodes come out of offline conversations that you and I are having back and forth. You're on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast, but text messages are flying, and we're always talking about different aspects of junior tennis, college tennis, developing players, the coach's role, all these things. And our most recent conversation kind of turned to, do parents really understand, and for that matter, do coaches really understand what it means to be high performance and what it takes to reach the level that can be called high performance, right? That there's a lot of kind of lack of knowledge or maybe misunderstanding, or maybe the term high performance is being just thrown about very casually without people really knowing what that means and what it takes. And so we're here to clarify.
Beautiful. Couldn't have said it any better. Well, Lisa, I mean, I would say over the last couple of weeks or so, I've turned to Pierre, the gentleman that's trained me my whole life, who's produced numerous champions of all levels in South Florida. And, I've said to him, I said, I'm not sure the general tennis public understand truly what it means to be training like a high performance junior and what it takes. I mean, people are always saying, oh, or the children, I want this, or I want that. And, I want to, go to a certain level of college. Maybe I want to be a pro career, but do they really understand what that takes on a daily basis, week after week, month after month, year after year, and what kind of progression and growth and types of tournaments and the financial aspects, all these things? Do people really understand what that is?
Yeah. And I think there are people, of course, who do, but
Yep.
generally speaking, I think that term high performance gets thrown about very freely without any weight behind it. And so,
I would tend to agree.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So we're gonna clear it up for everybody today. We're gonna solve the problem
in just 1 hour. In 1 hour, we're gonna get it done. Absolutely. Yep.
All right. So let's start with, what is your definition of a high performance junior development program?
Sure. Well, to develop, a player, to try to, take them as far as that player can go, to really try to, for them to maximize their potential. I mean, things have to be done really well. The coaching, they have to be really knowledgeable in really truly how to develop a junior player. And all junior players are different. That's why I say there's an art to this coaching, right? You can't coach two tennis players the same. You've heard me say this on many of your podcasts and everything. So, a great coach can really adapt and understand that particular player that they're coaching and try to get in their brain and get the most out of them, right? And so to develop a really solid high performance player, there's a whole, what's the right word? There's a whole um
Oop, you went
oh
wonky
yep.
again. There you are.
Oh, now I'm back. So,
Yeah.
there's a lot of progressions. There's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of hours, thousands and thousands of hours and monitoring and proper tournament scheduling and proper training and, that needs to happen. And you need to be with that particular individual or a couple of individuals each day. Right.
Mm.
And, and, you know, you see, kids are, maybe skipping practices or, maybe they have doctor appointments. It depends how serious you're going to be. I mean, you're competing against the world, right? Understand that for whether it's a certain level of college or maybe a pro career. So things
Mhm.
have to be done very well.
And it sounds like what you're saying, and I'm putting words in your mouth, sorry about that, but there needs to be a plan. And the plan can be tweaked along the way to, if things change here, there, or whatever. But there definitely needs to be a developmental plan in place. Meaning, you know, at this age, we're going to work on these types of skills. You're going to play this level of tournament until you've mastered that. And then we're going to evaluate the situation. And then we're going to move on to the next step in the plan, which may involve different types of shots, different types of movement, different types of fitness training, more in-depth nutrition, more in-depth psychological training, different levels of tournaments. And then we're going to assess that and then go to the next step. But it's got to be very purposeful and planned out. You can't just wing it and hope for the best. I mean, you can, and some people do and find success, but that's an awfully risky way to go about it.
Right. But before, as you were saying what you're saying, which is true and great, but before you even get to that, there needs to be 100% trust from the parents
Mm.
in what the coach is going to do with your child. And does that coach have a background in developing children on and off the court? Because you're going to spend thousands of hours with that person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And do you trust them in, handing your child to that individual? That has to be first and foremost. If you don't, there's going to be issues.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
As a coach, though, how do you build that trust with the parents? Because, this is a big deal. I mean, it's my kid, it's lots of money, it's lots of time, it's impacting my whole family. How do I know that you're the person that's going to do what you say you're going to do? What are some things I need to look for to know that I can trust you to take my kid where they want to go?
Well, actions speak louder than words, as my mother used to say, who
Yes.
has been on your podcast some years ago, right?
Yes.
It's not, I don't think it's hard to tell whether a coach is really invested in your child and they really care for that individual. That should not be hard to figure out. Now, obviously, you can do your research on previous results, right? And where previous students have gone. What ages have worked with that particular coach and what levels and right and all these things. You can do that research, but you know, first and foremost, that coach needs to be able and willing to put in hours every single day with that junior tennis player. That
Mhm.
has to be, it's not a random lesson. It's not a random group. That is not, I'm telling you, that is not going to cut it for high performance. It's not. Right. But listen, not everybody is wanting to do high performance. I understand that. But if you truly want to see how far your child can take their tennis, things are going to have to be done well.
So let's back up a second and really define the term high performance, because I want to be very clear on what we're talking about here. We are not talking about the kid that has the goal of playing for their high school team, which is a great goal, but that is not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about the kid that has the goal of playing club tennis in college. We are talking about the kid that is looking to be actively playing in the lineup on a college tennis team at whatever level, because let's face it, if you get recruited and actually earn a spot to play on a college tennis team, you have to be really good these days. I mean, as you just said, you're competing against the world. So I don't care if it's Division I, II, III, junior college, NAIA. If you're playing on a college team in any of those divisions, you must be a very solid, high performance player. Correct?
That is correct. And
Yeah.
you've put in, a whole bunch of years and sacrifice and, maybe giving up, holiday times because you're going to tournaments. You don't schedule things during your training sessions. I mean, it depends how serious you want to be about this.
Mm-hmm. So from the parent side, let's start there. What do you feel like parents need to know going in that you're seeing that they don't really know and understand when they bring their kids to you?
Sure. It's not just me. I mean, I speak to many other coaches as
Sure.
well, is that there is a certain level of commitment that needs to happen from both parties.
Both
Okay.
parties, meaning the parent and the coach?
Correct. Yeah, you can put
Okay.
the parents and the child, together, and then the coach, right?
Okay.
Both parties have to be committed. That's first and foremost,
And what does
right?
that commitment look like? Let's get
That
specific.
that commitment looks like every day. And that
Okay.
and there are plans for proper tournaments, proper physical training, proper mental training, proper everything training. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what that looks like, because that's
And
what's yeah.
oh, sorry. But there can be breaks in that training built into the plan, because you're not going to work 365 days a year. You're going
No,
to take some
correct.
days off, but it's planned for. Everything is laid out and planned for. Okay, so Todd just got a call from the other side of the planet and got disconnected, but we're back now. But Todd, we were talking
Yeah.
about the planning and what the family unit, meaning the parents and the child, and the coach all need to kind of come together on so that everybody's on the same page. And you were talking about the fact that every single thing needs to be planned. And I was asking you about taking breaks. That breaks need to be scheduled into the plan as well. So I'm going to let you take it from there.
Sure. So understand that, when you're younger, it's a little different than when you're a little bit older, right? When you're 10 or 12 years old and you can take more breaks, but then as you start getting, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, I mean, you're trying to hit it pretty hard and, get to a certain level, college, maybe pro career, right? So there might be fewer breaks for the families and everything, and holidays might be spent at tournaments, so, it's you got to take them when you can, because it's just, tennis is 12 months a year, right?
Mhm.
So, so that's tough, right? But, like I said, there's tremendous sacrifice from everybody involved, really trying to bring up, a player to maximize their potential.
I remember when my son was in high school and uh, we had a big tournament at Thanksgiving every year and a big tournament over winter break every year. And trying to explain to the extended family about why I wasn't at home with my husband and my other two kids, or why we couldn't take a trip with the rest of the extended family because we had to be at a tennis tournament, did not go over real well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You know, going back to, tennis tournaments and traveling and everything, the way that I was brought up was we tried to limit the traveling. We really tried to really harp on the training, right, before the traveling. And I know some parents are going to find this weird and frown upon this, but there were definitely times I did not play a tennis tournament for months.
Mhm.
Did not.
Because what were you doing
Because
instead?
oh, training my butt off
Well,
hard,
right. And
right?
so, and that's the issue, right? I feel like the way our ranking system works now, and it was different when you were coming up. It was really different when I was coming up, but even when you were coming up, it was different than it is now. Now everybody feels the need that if they miss a tournament, it's going to negatively impact their kids' ranking, which is going to negatively impact their ability to get into the next big tournament. And instead of focusing on becoming a better tennis player, they're focusing on getting to these tournaments so that they can earn these ranking points.
So here's what I'm going to say to that. If you're a parent who wants to micromanage ratings and rankings, you're in trouble. I'm going to tell you that right now. You are in trouble. To me, there is no high level, high performance person that is very concerned with those things. They're concerned with development and developing that player. And I've said this on social media, and I've spoken, brought up by, some unbelievable coaches, was that these coaches didn't even let me play a tennis tournament until I could prove certain things in training, and then it was earned to go play that tennis tournament. Okay? So
But
if you're
playing the tournament was not about how many ranking points you could get.
playing the tournament was about, I know that you're ready to go far and I'm not putting you in a tennis tournament wondering and guessing if you're going to get through the first or second round. Let's put it that way.
Mhm.
Okay, these are coaches that develop champions. They're not concerned with chasing rankings and ratings. They're concerned about producing a solid player, which then equates to some nice rankings and ratings, but that is not their focus. It
Mhm.
is not. Okay. So when I took training blocks of months, and then maybe I'd play a warm up tournament and then go to a super national,
Mhm.
right? And by certain ages, certain things needed to be developed and solid, and then you were on your way. But without that, it's not gonna work. I'm just, the parents are like, oh my god, right? They're probably listening to this, but I'm telling you that it has to start with the training, and we have this in reverse. Everybody is freaked out about a UTR, a rating, points, rankings, and that is not. It's not going to work. It's just not.
That can't be the focus. If the
No,
goal is high performance, if the goal is to play on a college tennis team, if the goal is to be a professional tennis player, the ratings and
here's
rankings cannot be driving that train.
here's what I can tell you. In the last 14 years, with the elite players that have come through my system, it was never even a discussion. The only thing going through my mind every day was what I need to work on with this player to get them better and get them more solid in certain areas. It wasn't even a discussion. And now, what's the first thing that people talk about?
Yeah.
The wrong
What's your
things.
UTR? Yep. What's your
The
UTR?
wrong things. And those players, if that's what's being spoken about all day and at the dinner table, I'm telling you, I don't know high level players that's what they're solely focused on.
Mhm. So from the player side, what is the commitment?
The
Let's
commit
start because I want to go through the timeline here. Let's start with a 10-year-old because surely younger than that, we're not making a commitment. I'm not even sure we're making a commitment at 10. Maybe 12 is where we need to start.
I have a 10-year-old that's seeing us every day for about 2.5 hours.
Okay.
So
Okay,
um
so there are the rare 10-year-olds, but
yeah.
typically when we're talking high performance, we're starting at age 11, 12, right?
Yeah, I'd say that's about correct, right?
Okay.
When we're starting, about a 10-year-old, I'm just, I'm looking for a solid foundation. I'm looking for certain intensity, certain level of concentration, certain level of focus, certain level of productivity of tennis training, which a lot of kids have no idea what that even is.
Well, I'm not
Okay.
sure I do. What does that mean?
So kids take groups and lessons, right? Which is normal. Okay. But then there's tennis training and being trained, you know, very focused in a very high discipline environment. You can go take a lesson and spray balls all over the place, but the coach is telling you your technique is looking better. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this player can hit certain targets. They're solid in certain areas, and they can do certain movements and they can duplicate things over and over and over the same way. They have hit so many balls and so many repetitions that these categories are very solid. And I'm going to tell you right now that the vast majority of kids that are coming through my door, they have none of this. So
Mhm.
then the parents are actually wondering why their child is not winning in tournaments. And I'm going to tell you, the productivity of the daily training, it's not there.
Mhm.
It's it's
And
it's not.
and I mean it is that repetition, right? And replication, being able to hit a target, you know, 7 or 8 out of 10 times that you're asked to do it. Not 10 out of 10. I mean, I don't think many people could hit a target 10 out of 10 times, but certainly greater than 50% of the time. As a young child, they need to be taught to replicate shots, replicate movement patterns, right? So that when they're put in that pressure situation of a tournament, it's there. It just comes.
Right. Well, what I can tell you is that, a lot of kids, they're not trained here. Okay. They're
He's
not
he's
trained.
pointing to his head for those of you who are not watching
Oh,
or just
right.
listening.
They're not trained for the 6 inches between your ears. They're not concentrating well enough to duplicate things over and over and over again. So most likely the discipline of the daily training hasn't been there, or you need to understand how to challenge and get in the brain of that child
Hmm.
to get the most out of them. And like I said, that's the art of coaching and understanding how to get that individual to do, to help them do certain things. Right. So, you know, there's tennis lessons, there's groups, and then there's real high performance tennis training.
And is real high performance tennis training only one-on-one, one coach, one student?
Absolutely not.
Okay. What can
Absolutely
it,
not.
what else is it?
It can be in a very small group with coaches and players that are pushing each other, that are training under pressure, right? Not easy, everybody happy, smiling, not nice, happy go lucky training environments. I'm talking about playing under pressure. So now that player can handle pressure in tournaments.
Mhm.
A lot of times the training environments are just too easy, they're too soft, and the kids are not being held accountable. So now when they go into tournaments, they're breaking down.
So it's not that you're talking about some magic drill that
Mm,
you do, for example, in your environment that no other coach knows to do. It's not that.
no,
It's the way the drill is.
structured.
Okay. And so walk us through if you're working on cross court forehand, what is the drill that you're going to do? And what is it about how you structure it and what you tell your players that makes it high performance?
Sure. So, we'll put a target or a couple of targets, maybe 2 feet or so from the sidelines and the baseline, 2 or 3 feet, right? And I'm looking at how the kids are moving, how early they're tracking the ball with their eyes so they can prepare their racket. I'm looking at, you know, you know the type of rotation they're putting on the ball. I'm looking at the ball placement. I'm looking at how often they can replicate these certain techniques. I'm looking at, how well they can concentrate, how well, they're moving in and out of the line. A lot of kids don't know how to position themselves, and then I'm also looking at can a child, self-correct, right? When they miss hit a ball, right? Or they hit it late, or they hit it short, or they miss it wide or long. Can they fix the next one, or do they make a whole bunch of errors in a row? I mean, this is tennis training, right?
And
And
so what's happening on court? Let's say you've got what, 6 kids on your court doing this drill? Would you have 6 kids? I mean, you tell me.
are you crazy? 6 kids on a tennis court?
How many?
Two?
Okay. So you've
Maybe,
got,
maybe three if it's a 2-on-1, maybe. Yeah.
okay. So you've got 2 or 3 kids. They're rotating through the line. You're on the other side of the net feeding balls to them.
No, no. Well, it could be a bucket drill or it could be a live ball drill, right? If they're going cross court, it's a live ball. If we have 2 kids on a side and one on the other, they might be, moving that person side to side throughout, and I got cones set up all over the place and they're trying to hit these targets. And if they're not making at least 4 in a row each, right, then they're not doing a good job. And, we're not happy.
And
Right.
then
So,
and so what happens in that situation? Because listen, we've all watched our kids in groups where your kid comes up to the line, it's their turn to hit the ball, they miss 5 in a row, and the coach says, okay, next.
no,
And
no.
there's zero feedback about what just happened.
Well,
And
first of all, the drill isn't stopping when kids are spraying balls. Okay. One, the way that I was brought up is if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. So if kids are missing balls, that's not going to go over well, because also keep in mind, you have 2 kids in a corner and they're not having to move.
hmm,
Okay. And then you have one that's really working hard, but all 3 kids need to be moving. If
hmm.
one kid is standing still, chilling out because the ball's not coming to them, that ain't going to go over well. Right? Because that kid's going to be in the clouds. They're not going to be focused. They're going to be in la la land.
Hmm.
Right? So again, it's how that coach wants to instill the discipline in those 2 or 3 students. But, if kids are spraying balls, you know, there might be a penalty.
But like, what are you saying to them if they're spraying balls? Like, I really want to get to the meat of what sets apart high performance training from everything else. Because again, it's not that you're doing any magic drills with them. You're doing the same drills that every coach around the world is doing. I learned that when I went to the Nadal Academy. We weren't doing anything any different than I've always done my whole life. It was just done with a different intensity and
Well,
with
100%. It's done with a different intensity. It's done with a different type of discipline, right? Understand that there's no magic to this, right? There isn't. Anybody trying to sell that they have the magic and the magical formula and I got the best technical, advice to give you and blah blah blah. Nonsense. I'll be nice. Nonsense, right? So how you develop a great player is that day in and day out, they go through the same crappy, boring drills and they do them very well at a high rate of discipline and intensity and concentration. This is what a lot of kids are missing, right? And so, the coaches, or, if I'm on the court or whatever, and I see kids missing, obviously I'm coaching them and correcting them. But then there needs to come a certain point where the coach needs to shut up.
Mhm.
And that player, when they make a mistake, they know how to self-diagnose and they fix it by the next ball. This is how you know that a player is growing and they can make corrections on their own. They've received enough coaching to understand when they miss a target or miss a shot, they can fix it by the next one. And if they can't, do not expect that student to do well in tennis tournaments. It's not going to happen.
But so for a young player who's just starting out on this journey of high performance tennis, obviously they don't come to you having this knowledge of how to self-correct, and they may not have the discipline yet. They may not have the ability to focus and concentrate for long periods of time yet. These are all things that get developed along with the tennis strokes and the movement and everything else. So let's say it's this kid's first week of training with you. What are you saying to them, or Pierre, or one of the other coaches that works with you? What are you saying to this child to help them learn how to self-correct, self-diagnose, stay focused, stay intense?
Sure. Well, listen, when we're going over all the fundamentals, no child is coming to the door with like the most beautiful Roger Federer fundamentals, right? I mean,
Right,
that
right.
that has to be developed, right? And that comes through thousands of hours and countless repetitions, right? Until that player owns that,
Yeah.
right? So until the all these shots are solid, right, and done the right way with certain form and certain movement and everything, you have to keep going over it and over and over. I mean, if your child can't understand 1 + 1 is 2, are you going to move on to multiplication and division?
Right.
I don't think so. So it's step by step, and everybody learns at a different rate. But what we also assess is how consistent that player is with themselves day in and day out. Anybody can play great one day or a couple of days, right? But how bad is the bad day, right? How bad is it?
Mhm.
Because as I've been explaining to my students, I said, you all can play very good tennis, right? But I'm not exactly sure who is showing up every day. So if we're talking about winning a tennis tournament, and this is where it goes back to, I don't want to put kids in tournaments that are going to lose first and second round when I know they're not solid, right? So if we're talking about going far in tournaments or winning tennis tournaments, you better be ready to compete and be solid for 5 matches
Mhm.
to
And
win that
you,
tennis tournament.
yeah, and you have to stay focused, which is oftentimes it's not the tennis itself that breaks down,
Correct.
it's the concentration.
Right. So, a lot of parents, oh my God, my child has double faulted too many times. Oh my goodness, my child, the forehand, the backhand, blah, blah, blah. A lot of times it's not a technical issue, but the parents go and they buy that lesson and everything because, they saw this shot not working or whatever. A lot of times it is a mental issue for that child that they couldn't self correct. They weren't concentrating that well. Maybe they got tight and started choking and it started breaking down, but going to buy that tennis lesson from your pro, I mean, the pros, they like to make that money, which is nice.
Yeah,
But understand that, it's not always, oh, the technique, right? It's
right.
it's not. It's not the technique. It didn't change from the training to the tennis tournament. It didn't change in a day or two, right? What changed was your child's brain. That's what actually changed. Your child's technique, the way they hit a forehand on Monday is not going to be much different than Tuesday or Wednesday. Understand that. There's no
Mhm.
magic to fixing that in a day or two. There isn't.
But how do you help them develop that ability to stay focused, that ability to recognize what the shortfall was, and that, what the right correction is for that? I mean, that's not something that just comes, in one lesson or 5 lessons or
No,
even in one year.
no, no. That comes through thousands and thousands of high level discipline training and concentration and doing things the right way. Because keep in mind that everything that these children are doing is a habit, whether it's a good habit or a bad habit. Everything is a habit. And the habits are very exposed when they get into the most pressure-filled situation, which is a tennis tournament. They will always revert back to their habits, whether they're great habits or not good habits.
Mhm.
And that's something that I assess all the time, right? Are
Yeah.
we moving along in the right direction when I'm at a tennis tournament and I'm seeing the things that we've worked on, or ooh, that player, they're not handling this pressure well. Ooh, they're tight, they're choking, they're playing the wrong way. They're so scared. They're thinking of their UTR. They're not focused on the right things. They're focused on their ranking. They're focused on their mom and dad that's getting pissed off on the sideline. All these things that don't matter.
And so when you come back to the practice court with that kid who's just exhibited those things in the tournament, what do you say? What do you do to help them move forward from that?
Well, first of all, if they've gone into a tennis tournament, you know, I, they're in that tennis tournament because I thought they were ready to play that tennis tournament. So when I start working with them, I may not say a word. You're going to prove to me that you own these shots because we've done them so many times that I am not going to hold your hand through this.
Mhm.
You need to step up and be a big boy or a big woman, right? And own it. It's you. You're accountable. You've trained it. Now step up.
Mhm. But so on Tuesday, when they're back on the practice court and things fell apart, okay, you say that. But what if they say to you, I don't know what happened out there? Like I was playing so great all week. I mean, we hear this all the time, right? The
Mm-hmm.
kid does so well on the practice court, and then they get into the pressure situation and they just flounder. This is not uncommon. And even for high performance players, maybe even more so for high performance players, because they feel that pressure at a deeper level. I'm sure it's very common for them to kind of lose control over themselves when they're in these tough matches. So, what is it that you can do on the practice court in a high performance environment to help them get better at this?
Well, I mean, listen, what you just said, I've done it myself. Now the question is why did that player break down mentally in that tennis tournament? What is really going through their mind? Is it they're focused on the wrong things? Ratings, rankings. Oh my gosh, I need to win this match. I need my UTR to go up. Oh my gosh, my mom and dad are sitting over there, right? I need to win, right? I need to win because they're here and I want to play well for them. And all these things take away from your child's performance.
Mhm.
The children cannot play to the best of their ability, win or lose, if this is what's going through their mind. And the reason I can tell you is because I've had those thoughts myself, right?
Of
When I was
course.
when I was coming through, right? I was not immune to that, you know. But what the way that I was trained was that I was trained in such a high level of discipline was that I had such specific game plans that I needed to execute that were given to me that took away any of those thoughts that I'm talking to you about.
Because your brain was focused on executing the game plan and didn't have space for those other things to seep in and derail you. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. There's no way that I could have executed my game plan with any of those thoughts running through my mind.
So the priority, what I'm hearing, if I'm correct, is as the high performance coach, it's your responsibility to arm your players with the game plan that's going to occupy their brain space so that they don't have any room to let this other garbage interfere with their ability to concentrate and perform.
Bingo.
Okay. So I mean, this is really important, I think, because I can tell you from going through years of tournaments with my own kid that I can maybe think of one match out of all those years. I'm not counting college because I wasn't part of the process in college, but in juniors, I can't recall a coach ever sending my kid into a tournament saying, this is the game plan for this match. And when you get through this match, I'm going to give you the game plan for the next match. Or this is the game plan for the tournament. And then giving specific tactics that he was to employ through every match in the tournament. And when we're talking about tactics and game plans, I mean, depending on the age of the player, Todd, you're talking about things like, I only want you hitting your backhand slice if you can go up the line with it. Or, you're playing a lefty, so I want your second serves going to this spot every time. Right? I mean, are these the kind of things you're talking about? Or is it something different?
Yes, yes. So, I'm thinking of, all the matches I've played in my career, and I'm not going to name names, but there are players that you guys have seen on TV.
Mhm.
And some of my game plans have been as simple as I'm going to hit almost every single shot to this person's forehand because it'll crack and break down after 2 or 3. Or this person does not move well. I'm going side to side with this player every single point. Or this person has a bad backhand up high. I'm going high and heavy 2 or 3, and I'm going to open the court. This person I can't beat from the baseline, so I'm going to take their second serve and I'm going to transition. And I'm going to serve and volley as much as I can to not get into extended rallies. I mean, these types of game plans need to be executed every match based on who you're playing. If you think that what you're watching, like this week, it's Rome, right, on red clay. If you do not think that these players have very disciplined game plans going into these matches, you are out of your mind. Okay, I'm going to tell
But
you
is
that
it the
right
player
now.
coming up with it, or is it the coach coming up with it? And I'm
Both.
talking about, let's talk about the juniors though. So a 12-year-old going to play a 12 and under tournament, are you saying that 12-year-old should develop a game plan for every match, or are
Yes.
you the coach going to give the player the game plan, or is it
Well,
something you do jointly?
so it can be jointly, but at 12 years old, I don't, results, some of the parents will be like, oh my gosh, results don't matter.
Right.
Okay. But what does matter is that player is playing the right way and they can follow a game plan and they're executing what they trained.
But who's
Okay.
coming up with a game plan is my question.
Well, if my 12-year-old, if it's my student, I'm going to tell them a game plan before the match, and I want to see mentally how often they can execute it,
Mhm.
the frequency of that, and I want to see how long the mental lapses go for. Right? I want to see the emotions. Do they choke? Do they get overexcited? Do they lose their concentration? How long does that go for? That's what I'm assessing. Can they follow and be disciplined and focused like what I've trained them to do in the training?
Mhm.
What we're talking about, most parents and kids, this might be a different language to them.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, here's the thing. There are kids that, they're gonna, at age 12, you're gonna give them the game plan. They're gonna internalize it. They're gonna understand it. And they're like machines. They're gonna get out on the court and they're gonna perform. And yes, they're gonna make errors because they're human. We're
Of
not
course.
talking about errors in like I missed the forehand long or I missed a ball in the net. If they're going for the right shot,
Perfect.
that's all you're looking for at that
Perfect.
stage.
Perfect.
And what's so awesome about having a kid go into a tournament with a game plan, if the parents are informed about the game plan, then the parents have something they can watch for and help report back to the coach after. And it kind of
Well,
takes the stress away.
the parents are learning, right? And
Yeah.
they should learn, what's going on, right? But the vast majority of kids, they don't have this structure.
No.
They can't look across the net and say, ooh, this player has a bad forehand, or ooh, that forehand or that backhand looks weird, or they double fault a lot, or whatever it is, or this player is serving me 80% to my backhand. So, I know it's coming there, right? And this is what I need to do to break down that person because they're playing me this way. The kids have no idea about this. So when we talk about a high performance player and understanding how to break down players across the net and them being so solid in all these fundamentals, a lot of this is missing.
Mhm. So, okay, we've been talking about the 12-year-old player. Let's jump forward to a 16-year-old.
Mhm.
And of course, the expectations are going to be different for a 16-year-old because presumably they're more mature. They're physically more mature, but they're also mentally and emotionally more mature. If you've been working with them since age 12, they've had 4 years of getting used to training at this high level, keeping their focus throughout their training every single day, taking care of their bodies appropriately, making sure they're sleeping, doing all the right things to maximize their chances of having the outcome that they want. Even though we're still at 16, outcomes are more important than they were at 12, but they're still not the most important thing, right? At 16, there's still some room to develop.
Well, yeah, you still have a couple of years before it's college placement time or maybe a pro career. But again, it's about if we're talking about that player in tournaments, it's about, are they doing the right things? Are they hitting the right shots? Are they able to maintain mentally and physically, right? And technically and tactically, are they able to maintain, right?
Mhm.
Can they follow the plan? And
So
for how long?
So let me ask you this, Todd. At what point would you, let's say you've been working with a kid for a couple years, and after 2 years of training with you and doing everything that you're offering, the kid still isn't able to execute in pressure situations. Is there a point at which you say, you know what? This kid is, they're just not wired for this. And it's nothing against the kid, it's nothing against the family, it's nothing against the coach. This kid just isn't, this isn't for them. They need to play at a different level or find another sport to play, or I don't know. Do you ever get to that with a kid?
I'm trying to think. I don't know if I have, because I probably would have recognized that before 2 years,
Okay.
right? But you
I
know,
mean, let's say the kid loves tennis. They love training. They do great. They focus. They do everything right in training, but they just can't get over that hump in the pressure situation.
I think then that's a coaching thing. I don't, to really help them with the pressure. I mean, every coach has had students where, and even myself, where, the pressure became so much and it was tough and I needed to learn how to handle it. And, this is learning. I mean, if that child really loves tennis, right? And they're having trouble with the pressure, then you may need to adjust the training. You may need to have them focus on, maybe some different things, right? Like I said, they might be focusing on the wrong things, like I explained a little bit earlier,
Mhm.
right? So, if that child really loves tennis, but they're having some trouble with handling pressure of tournaments and tournament matches, there might be something misfiring, within themselves. It could be, maybe it's coming from parents. Maybe, like I said, they're focusing on the numbers and the ratings and the rankings and these
Mhm.
things. But if they truly love to play and they love to compete, but they're having trouble emotionally in tournaments, there's something wrong, right? And so then it depends on how well you know that player and if that player can communicate with that coach, so that coach truly understands how to help that player get over that hump.
Mhm. And I mean, I guess in certain situations you would bring in maybe a sports psychologist or, you know, somebody for the kid to talk to help figure out what's at the root of the pressure
Yeah. I
feeling.
mean, yeah, I mean, what I can tell you is just from my experiences is that usually it just is that player just is not focused on the right things, or there's a tremendous amount of pressure
Mhm,
coming from, a parent or both parents, right?
mhm,
And so understand, the parents that are listening to this, understand that a child has put enough pressure on themselves to play well and try to win, that they don't need any more pressure. They don't, right? And I may like put a little pressure in practice, or, hey, do this, do that, and all this, but ultimately there's a fine line in cracking that kid mentally,
mm.
and really helping them get over the hump to be able to handle the rigors of being a true high performance tennis player, right?
Yeah,
I've had plenty of parents crack their kids, and when that happens, I'm going to tell you, it could be over for that kid.
right.
It
Yeah,
Unfortunately, it could be
it's
over,
tough
and
to
that and
come
that's
back from
sad.
that. Yeah.
It is tough. I've had it, and you know, I try to communicate to how to do this, but some parents just want to do it their way. So that's, but they can crack their kid, and then the potential of that player, it's destroyed,
Yeah,
right?
that's really
And
sad.
it is sad, but listen, if you hire experts, let the experts do the job,
Hmm.
right?
Well,
And
and
that comes down to trust also.
and that's exactly what I was just getting ready to say. It's how we started this conversation, is that the family has to trust the coach, and the coach has to earn and maintain the trust of the parents and the player in order for this to work. And again, we are talking high performance tennis today. We are not talking, the kid that enjoys playing tournaments every now and then, that, wants to play on their high school team, maybe wants to play some league. We're talking about kids that are striving to play in college, maybe beyond college, that are committed to training at this high intensity, this high level, and yes, this expensive level for years, not just a few weeks here and there, but a daily commitment over years to achieve these goals.
Correct. Absolutely.
And what are we talking about in terms of the finances of this, Todd?
Well, I was thinking about this earlier today, as I was like, all right, I'm getting on with Lisa tonight and everything. So I'm going to tell you something that a lot of parents don't want to hear, but
Great.
I can tell you that a lot of parents piss away a lot of money the wrong way. Okay? They do, in picking bad tournaments, bad scheduling, right? Throwing kids around, chasing the points, all these things. Parents piss away a lot of money. Where I'm like, they should just pay me that money. It'd be way better for their kid to train more, because they're going to get a hell of a lot better paying me that money than they are going to these stupid tournaments. No offense, but that is the God's honest truth about it. And I just shake my head and I'm like, what is going on here? Okay. So, what are we talking about financially?
Yeah.
I mean, are we talking about the training, the traveling? I
All of
mean,
it. I mean, if we're looking at a kid's junior tennis journey from start to going off to college or going on to the pro tour, if that's where they're heading, I mean, is it $10,000? Is it $50,000? Is it $100,000? I mean, what are we talking about?
well, here's what I can tell you. The USTA and these amazing players that you're seeing on TV, when they took these 14-year-old tennis players, right? Those
Mhm.
kids were all, from what I was told by a former USTA coach who has produced the world's greatest tennis players, they were all, I think, between $100,000 to $150,000 per kid per year for everything when they
Okay.
were at the USTA. That was, training, traveling, the dorms, all that stuff, right? 100
Mhm.
to 150 a kid per year. Those kids are living well,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
yeah.
obviously. Nice on the USTA's budget. I would say a
And
high
we're talking
performance kid.
about 10 years of that, 8 to 10 years of that.
Yeah, well, these kids were 14, so let's say 4 or 5 years.
4 years.
They
Okay.
were trying to become professionals, and a whole bunch of them went to the highest level of Division One, and were tremendous amateurs as well. But they were traveling all over the world, right?
Mhm.
Playing the biggest junior tournaments in the world, and probably even low level professional tournaments. I mean, no expense was spared. Let's put it
Mhm.
that way. Plus, really great coaching. I mean, these coaches were tremendous, right? So these are like the TFOs and the Tommy Pauls and the Riley Opelkas. This is the generation I'm talking about. This is
Okay.
what you're seeing, these amazing players, Taylor Fritz, these amazing players on TV, right? That are,
Mhm.
the world's best, right?
Yeah.
I would say it could range. I mean, the weekly training or monthly training, it depends on, if you're in a big academy, that could maybe be a little cheaper because there's a big quantity of students. If you're in something smaller, like the arena that I run, that'll cost you more, right? I
Mhm.
mean, there's two ways of running the tennis business. You take on masses of kids at lower prices, or you take on fewer kids, and try to have higher quality at higher prices.
Mhm.
Going to national tournaments, you want to stay in the Marriott, or you want to stay in the Super 8,
Yeah.
right? You want to fly your coach and pay him his salary or her salary. You want to try to stay local and try to dominate there, or you're throwing your kid around the world in ITFs and national tournaments and all that kind of stuff. I'd say you're looking, I don't know, at the low end, numbers in my mind. Um, I'd say on the low end, 30 to 50,000, and on the high end, 100 to $150,000 a year.
Wow.
That would be the guesstimate in my mind,
Yeah.
right? Depending on how the parents, their budgets, and everything. I mean, it can't be cheap to go to Indian Wells and go play the Easter Bowl, and you fly your coach. And I played Indian Wells. I played Easter Bowl as a kid, and then I played Indian Wells. There's nothing cheap out there,
No.
right?
Right.
It's gorgeous. It's one of the nicest places in the world, right? So I mean, it's not cheap to put your kid around ITFs all over the world. That ain't cheap either.
Right.
So,
But
you
here's the
know,
thing that I find so interesting is that those numbers that you just threw out, let's say 30,000 on the high end, 150,000 on the, excuse me, 30,000 on
yeah,
the low end, 150,000 on the high end per year. You could spend, you're saying high performance tennis can be in that range, but guess what? Mediocre tennis costs the same amount. So why are you going to spend that money on mediocre tennis? Why wouldn't you invest in the best training and the most logical tournament schedule that you can?
well, here's what my mother has always said. She said, Todd, you can recover money, but you can never recover time.
Correct.
Okay. Understand that there's a window for these children to become solid and good. And once that window closes up, that's it. You're going to, hopefully to a certain level of college, right? And if things
Mhm.
are done well and really well, and if that player really wants it, maybe there's a pro career,
Yeah.
right? But there is a certain window. When I assess a player, there are certain things that I'm looking for, usually by a certain age, so that we can move on and work on more detail oriented things. But
Mhm.
many times the foundations are not good and they're poor, so that we're fixing these things so that we can move on and go on to other things, right? And then it comes
Mhm.
down to how smart that child is, how disciplined that child is, how focused they are,
Right.
how quick they learn, right? So that we can move on to more detail oriented training,
Mhm.
right? So, but, to me, and you've heard me say this, and it was the theme growing up, is if you're gonna do it right. And if you don't do it right, don't bitch and complain that your child is not having great success.
Yeah. Well, yes, I agree with that. And this high performance thing is not for everybody.
Absolutely.
Tennis can be for everybody. High
Mm-hmm.
performance tennis is not for everybody. So again, yes, it costs the same to develop a high performance player as it does to produce just a mediocre tennis player. I mean, you still have lessons, you still have tournament expense, travel, all that, equipment. If your child is showing signs of wanting this high performance type of training, understand that it shouldn't cost you really any more than what you're already spending. You just need to find the right environment to get them there. And I think that's a really important message for people to hear and understand. It's not that it costs more to get your kid really good versus so-so. So,
Yeah,
you
I mean,
know,
it's just, listen, I mean,
but you
if
have to want it. The kid has to want it. The
yeah,
kid has to want it.
I mean, listen, I mean, if we're talking about numbers, I can talk about South Florida. I don't really know a lot about the
Yeah.
rest of the country, but if we take it on a weekly basis, there are places, that your child can be, they're homeschooled and training all day long. And that can range between 500 to $750 a week on the cheaper end,
Mhm.
right? And then on the more expensive end, and that doesn't include lessons, right? That's just, kind of the group sessions and stuff, right?
Mhm.
And then on, the more expensive, you're maybe looking at 1,000 to maybe 1,200, 1,500 a week, right? And then, but those are priced higher, because probably there's fewer students, and maybe it's, quality of coaching, or right. And so those are smaller environments, but you're going to pay for it, right?
Mhm.
So, it depends, the budget, but it also depends what you're looking for,
Right.
right? The quality of training, the quality of individual around your child or children, right? So, you know, it just really all depends. Then, tournaments, and then, do you have coaches going to tournaments, and right, and all
Yeah.
these things, right? So, it's, it just depends. Everybody's case is different.
Well, and I want to just kind of make one more point, and then we're going to wrap this up, I promise. But this kind of all started because this term high performance is being thrown around so loosely now. Every coach is calling him or herself a high performance coach. Every academy, everything, it's high performance, high performance. That's the buzzword. But until we understand what truly constitutes high performance coaching, high performance development, high performance training arenas, we're just throwing our money away. And, we're not going to get the results, and our child, more importantly, is not going to get where they want to go. So it's crucial, parents, that you understand the level of coaching that your child is receiving. If your child has these high aspirations for their tennis, then find them a coaching situation that is going to help them achieve that. Don't just keep spending money on a situation where the coach doesn't have the knowledge, doesn't have the desire to devote to helping your child reach that level.
Here's what I think, as you were just saying that, which was excellent, right? If a parent walks into an arena and it doesn't blow their mind that the discipline and the concentration and the intensity is at a premium, then you may have some questions. It
Yeah.
should blow that person's mind that they're like, wow, look at what these kids are doing. Look at how hard they're working. Look at look at what these coaches are demanding from them. Then it might be high performance.
Yeah. And I'll just say, you know, for those of you who may have missed the episode that I recorded at the Nadal Academy, go back to that episode and just listen to the interviews with the American kids that were there for the week training. Listen to what they're saying about what was different about being at the Nadal Academy versus being at their country club back home.
Ooh.
I mean,
Oof.
it's very
Uh,
clear exactly
yeah.
what you're saying, Todd.
I'm sure maybe it
Those
was probably
kids'
mind
minds were
blowing.
blown. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so it is very
Yeah.
obvious when you walk into a high performance training environment that that's what's happening. It is very different from what
Yeah,
most of us are used to seeing.
Kids they should be uncomfortable. They're grinding, they're sweating, they're breathing heavy, the repetitions are high, the water breaks are short. This is what you need to look for, right? And then, hey, then I think you found it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Todd, this has been eye-opening as always. I always feel like we find the touchy subjects to delve into, but it's always fun.
you find someone like me to talk about those things.
Thank goodness for you.
But hey, thank God I work for myself. I don't work for an academy or a club or the USTA or a college program. I can just let it fly with you, Lisa.
I know. It's awesome. It's awesome. Well, I appreciate you. And for those of you that are watching or listening, all of Todd's contact info is going to be in the show notes. So make sure you check that out. But he's all over social media, Instagram and Facebook primarily. But I'll have his email address, his phone number, website, and all social media links in the show notes on parentingaces.com in case you want to send your kid to get beat up on us.
Oh my
No,
God.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I will tell you, I have talked to many, many families who have sent their kids down to train with you. And I will say 95% of them have had extraordinarily positive experiences. So we've had a couple that their kid really wasn't seeking high performance. They thought they were.
Right.
And then they got there and realized this isn't what I'm looking for. And that's okay.
That's great. But at least they got that education, which is great.
Right. Yeah.
Which
absolutely.
is why families come, right?
Exactly.
As I say, it's very educational for the student and the parent or parents, right? They need to understand, what this is.
Yeah,
right.
For sure. For sure.
So
Todd takes kids as drop-ins. He takes kids full-time. So I'll just give that little plug and check the show notes for his contact info if you want to head down to Florida with your kid or kids and expose them to what this kind of training really looks like. Todd, thanks. I will let you get back to your family. It's been a pleasure. And to my audience, thank you so much for tuning in. And we will catch you next time on Parenting Aces.